Hey everyone. Uh, right now, I want to take a look at Baba stock, Alibaba. There's been a lot of buzz around the lockup expiration, a lot of expectations, and a lot of questions. Is Baba a buy at this point in time? And if you had seen my previous video, I kind of drew out a roadmap of what I thought would happen leading up to the expiration, and then what would happen after expiration. So now that the expiration actually has happened, I want to take a look at the reaction and compare it to some previous IPO lockup expirations and see, make a good judgment call if this is a buy at this point. First, let me just go ahead and take a look at this from a purely technical perspective without regard to whether we knew it was lockup expiration or not. From a purely technical perspective, what we have is Baba being in a downtrend. And there was a break of this support line here, which was the swing low last year. And as expected, the reaction to the break of the support was a huge rally on decent volume and great price action. Unfortunately, it was still respecting its downtrend line here. So it continued to pull back, retest that line, and again, once the line was broken, we had a positive reaction pushing the stock price back above the support line, which gave away a few days later. But here we had a higher low, although not much higher, but we still technically had a higher low than this point where we broke the support line at first. So from this point on, we've been rallying into the lockup expiration. The downtrend line was challenged on this day and followed up by this day and finally closed above on the third day. Now today we had a full day where we were outside of the downtrend line, and not only that, we're challenging a daily high from this candle right here. So from a purely technical perspective, and looking at volume, you can see on the buying days the volume is much higher after this sell-off here. This is kind of like a capitulation volume here, and you've got almost equally sized volume back on the up day with dramatic price movement, and then the subsequent sell-offs are much lower, yet the buying volume is increasing here into lockup. So volume-wise, it's also showing a lot of accumulation here. Now, why I sent out a message that today, if it crossed above this daily high, that would be a buy signal for me. Now, why would that be a buy signal? Well, let's take a look at the history a little bit. And as you can see from Baba stock, when it made its high top here, you look here, you've made a lower high, you've made lower highs here, and then again you've made lower highs here. The gap down would be a lower high here, another lower high, another lower high, another lower high, and this was the last lower high. And here we're challenging that high for the very first time. Not since it topped out many months ago did we challenge any daily highs and were able to break above it. So this is the first day that we've been able to do that. And to me, that's a bullish signal on higher volume. So overall, I think considering how many shares were released, 460 million shares, and eked out a 30-cent gain that day. It shows that, and the volume was 38 million versus an average of 16 million. So there was selling definitely, but at the same time we can see that investors also were holding on to their shares looking for higher prices. This was a buying opportunity. So based on a purely technical perspective, I think the stock looks really good. It's made a low, a high, a lower high, and now it's challenging, trying to make a newer high. So I think it's a buy signal. I bought small quantity today. I bought a small quantity above this line here today, and because it was an extended downtrend, I'm going to scale in my buys within this range here. So I would add on this line of support, and I would add at this swing low here. Now I normally don't like to scale in like this, but given the extended downtrend nature, given that it's lockup expiration, we might have somebody who's going to wait a little bit extra long to get back up to here and then sell off again. So we don't know what's going to happen, and because of the uncertainty, I've decided to scale in my position. I also did cover calls just to kind of hedge a little bit against any kind of pullback to this area. So that's a look at the Baba stock on a technical basis. Now let's compare this with Facebook, which IPO'd in, let's see, when did it IPO? 2012, and its lockup expired on August 2012. Just like Baba, their charts are very similar, at least this part of the chart. Baba had a nice rally. Facebook really didn't have much of a rally except this part here. So from this part here to the base of this triangle, we had almost a 45% pullback, and that's very similar to Baba's price action. And again here, a gap down on earnings, similar to Baba. And you come here on lockup expiration, we had 271 million shares released that day. Stock had a lot of selling pressure and dropped 6.27%. So, and volume here was 157 million shares compared to the previous day was 47 million shares. So almost 3 times the volume, whereas Baba was only twice the volume on lockup expiration date, and Baba had almost double the number of shares released. So if you look at those kind of numbers and compare it, you can see that there wasn't a lot of support here for Facebook. Fewer shares were released, but more were sold, and the stock price was way under pressure. But Baba had 450 million shares with only double the average daily volume. So that's pretty good. So what happened to Facebook after? Facebook pulled back, continued to pull back here from this support line. It dropped about actually I think I measured it from this low here to this low. Okay, it was 12% here from the IPO day, and about 6% from the low of the triangle. So Facebook did continue to pull back. But at the same time, when we had this downtrend line, it didn't really make any significant, it was still pretty high up on the triangle, whereas Baba was right here, around here at the triangle. So when you're closer to the peak, you're either going to get a breakdown or a break up, and Baba was clearly into the expiration, was trying to break out of this triangle, just trying to send a bullish signal. Nevertheless, Facebook did rally from this low here to this high here, was a 30% rally, and consolidated until its next earnings, where it gapped up but pulled back, but ultimately headed up from there. So when you take a look at a long-term perspective, if you're a trader, you're pretty close to a rally that can bring you 30%. If you're a long-term investor, you're buying at the very bottom. Now Facebook today had a nice breakout, and we're in the 82 areas. So as a long-term investor, this may be a good bottom for you. And for a trader, you may want to look for a better buy signal, but there's still a 30% rally that you can trade off of. So for Facebook, this looked like a bottom. GoPro, also another high-flying IPO, had a dramatic run up into its lockup expiration. And as you can see here, Uh, it gained, I can't really measure here for some reason, but let's just say from this breakout point here, it had gained almost double, 100%. Going into expiration, um, I couldn't find out how many shares were released that day, but it dropped 6.9%, very similar to Facebook on increased volume. We had 31 million shares here, and we had 26 million shares on average the day before, excuse me, not the average. So a pretty big pullback for GoPro. Um, this stock is a funny stock because GoPros have their camera, but that's pretty much it. It's almost a one-trick pony, many have said, and it's hard to really. They don't have any real IP, any real besides their brand. Their chips are from ABBA. I'm not sure where they get their lens or whatever it is, but not real much moat in this stock. It's easy for a competitor to come and buy the same chips and make the same similar types of cameras, and so they don't have a lot of protection in terms of IP and IP equity and stuff like that. So the stock has sold off dramatically, and it's still barely trying to break out here. So a lot of pressure on GoPro after IPO. It did rally for 3 days, tried to break the high, but got rejected and has continued to go lower. Let's take a look at another one. Twitter. So Twitter was a mix of both Facebook and GoPro. After its IPO, it rallied up, big rally, and like GoPro, it has fallen down since then, and its lockup period ended in May 2014. And here you see they had a similar amount of shares, about 500 million shares released that day, and the stock dropped a whopping 18%. 18% of the, that just shows there's not a lot of investor confidence in this company. I think at that time, Twitter was not positive. It's still negative EPS. So its fundamentals and earnings wasn't very strong. So people who could took profits and cashed out. Facebook and Alibaba are different stories in terms of, their profitability. Their fundamentals is a much different picture than Twitter was. GoPro is profitable. It's growing, but there's concerns about its one-trick pony. Baba is a very well diversified e-commerce player, huge in Asia, dwarfing both Amazon and eBay. So Baba's story is much different than this, and you can see it in the chart. When 500 million shares were released, the stock dropped 18%. That's not a vote of confidence in the stock. Baba, on the other hand, eked out a 30-cent gain, and I'm not going to calculate the percentage because TradingView doesn't show that here when I roll it over compared to TC2000. But still, nonetheless, on higher volume, it's going out and it's breaking out. So I think Baba, comparing to the other IPOs, looking at its fundamentals, depending on your time frame, are you an investor or are you a trader looking, a swing trader looking to hold the stock for days or weeks? I can see it rallying up to possibly this high here as resistance. And if we measured that, we might get a 20% run here into earnings come April. So now if you're a long-term investor and you believe in this company, this could potentially be a long-term low. Just like Facebook, where Facebook is at 80, we could see the stock back in the 120s once it starts showing some growth. So, I think it's a buy. I think it's good for a trade. I think it's also a good buy for a long-term investor. As long as they continue to prove their performance. So that's my reasoning. That's my logic on Baba at this point. So I hope that's been informative. I think whenever you're not sure about something, it's good to look at similar stocks and look at their charts and compare their behaviors to kind of see what you might expect to happen. So hopefully that was pretty informative. Obviously, it's a very small sampling of data. I didn't want to go back 50 years and find every hot stock in each era. But these were, I think, pretty big IPOs from the last year or two, and we wanted to compare with those. So if you like the video and you want to keep up to date with the videos I put out, please click on the subscribe button, and YouTube will notify you when new videos come out. And thank you for listening.